Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I have my April wrap-up. So I think April was quite a bit of a success. I read a ton of things. I read 17 books in the course of April, which is kind of mind-boggling. I don't really know how exactly I did that, but I did the thing. So I'm pretty happy with that. That honestly might be, besides January, my most successful month of reading. Let's go ahead and get into these stats for the month. So with those 17 books, I ended up reading a total of 4,592 pages and listened to 4 hours, 22 minutes, and 51 seconds worth of audiobooks. I read 12 physical books, 3 ebooks, and 1 audiobook, and I had 14 of those books that were from my personal library, and the other 3 were borrowed. Of my star ratings, I had 6 5-star reads, 9 4-star reads, a 3-star, and a 2-star, which the 2-star I've already decided basically I am very likely going to unhaul when it comes to my quarterly unhaul for April, May, and June. But let's get into the books. So first one I finished was Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. This was my March read for the Witcher series. Gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Really liked it. A very strong start to the beginning of the actual story of The Witcher, which was so much fun. You can go check out the live show for that down in the description. We did a whole live show talking about this, as well as Sword of Destiny, which was the second prequel book of the series before getting into the main series, which we started up in March. Next, I completed OkCupid by Mason Deaver. This was another carryover from March. This was a book I borrowed from the library. I Wish You All the Best so much that when I immediately saw that this had come out, I grabbed it as soon as I could, and I didn't like it as much as I did I Wish You All the Best. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars as well. It was good, don't get me wrong. Definitely well done. It just didn't hit the same way, I think, as I Wish You All the Best did, and I think it had something to do with the way that the ending of the story overall went. I didn't care for it as much as I had wanted to like it. The next book I completed was another carryover from March, which was You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kalynn Bayron. This is a slasher novella that takes place on a campsite where it's supposedly kind of maybe haunted, but at the very least a slasher film was made at this camp, and the camp is essentially like a murder mystery camp kind of thing, more of like slasher horror kind of idea. But what ends up happening is someone starts actually killing off some of the people that are on this camp, that are employees, and it gets into some really dark and twisted things that honestly I didn't see coming, and I think that that was so well done. I love that it was so short and compact, but really packed a punch. Like, I think if this book was any longer, it would not have done the story justice. I prefer slasher horror, I think, to be a little bit more intensely done when it's in a shorter format, and so I really appreciated that Kalynn had taken not only the time to write the novella, but had taken care to make sure that things weren't overdone, weren't really overzealous in terms of the slasher horror elements. This is, I think, definitely one of the better slasher horror books I have read thus far. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Have loved everything by Kalynn Bayron so far, so I definitely think she's going to be an auto by author for me. Next, I borrowed a copy of Godkiller by Hannah Kaner, which was a carryover again for March for Brandy's Book Club. I was really disappointed in this one. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. Just was so boring to me. I felt like I just could not connect to the characters. I felt like the whole thing was just way too drawn out, and it just didn't keep my interest in any way that I had wanted it to. I will be reading the sequel Sunbringer here in May because that is Brandy's book club pick for the month of May, but whether or not I'm going to enjoy it, I don't really know. At least Godkiller is more fresh in my mind, that going into Sunbringer I'm going to have a little bit more of a better understanding of the story, but it was not my favorite by any means, and I just didn't really gel with it, I think, as much as I probably wanted to initially going into it. Conversely, though, we have Golden Son, which was my next read. That was another carryover from March. This I ended up giving a 4 out of 5 stars. As far as a sequel goes, it was really good. I really liked how we moved entirely away from the competition aspects that were involved in Red Rising, and we are seeing the after effects of that, but we are also seeing the actual infiltration of the government that there is within this world of Red Rising, which, if you don't know, it's basically considered a lot of times like Hunger Games for adults kind of idea. At least the first book is, because it definitely has the Hunger Games vibes. This is a little bit more on the political side of things, where we see a lot of political turmoil. We see a lot of scheming and planning on the part of Darrow, our main character, who in the first book we learn is a Red, and a Red essentially in this world is the lowest of the low class. They are used as labor, and essentially what happens is there's this revolution that starts kind of brewing within the Reds, and when Darrow's wife is hanged, and he essentially is then killed for trying to essentially bury her properly. Actually, more than meets the eye to the political machinations that are going on in this world, and essentially how the Reds are being used as slaves when most of the Gold, who are like the top tier people of this world, are already settled on different settlements that the Reds were supposedly building to bring Golds over to. So there's a lot of scheming involved in this one too. Like I said, this one definitely plays more on the political side of things. We've moved past essentially the setup of Red Rising to get Darrow to be able to infiltrate the governmental system that there is in this world, and now this is really where he starts to actually make moves in the political parties that make lasting impacts. I will say that a lot of the political stuff, again, just like with high fantasy, went way over my head, so I didn't enjoy this as much as I think most people who are die hard for this series loved, but this is a series I would love to reread in the future because I think it's just that good, and I think that by rereading it I will catch a lot of the things that I had missed the first time. Next, I completed Starling House, which was technically a carryover from March as well because I started it in March. This was for a book club that I am participating in with my mom and my sister. We have yet to really actually do the book club for this one, as well as our April read, but this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars again. I thought that the beginning of it was really slow. I was thinking at first, getting through the first part of this book, I was going to end up giving this a 2-star because I could not get into the story by any means. And then we get the magical paranormal stuff that comes in, and then my interest is piqued because really the beginning of this is setting up the fact that you have this character named Opal who takes on the job of being a housekeeper for this man who owns Starling House, which Starling House in this story is kind of like that gothic manor that nobody really knows much about. There's been some mysterious things that have supposedly gone on there, and there's a lot of rumors going around about what may have happened, who might have been involved, things like that. And so Opal takes it upon herself to, one, get really involved with it because she's obsessed with it from childhood, and she ends up then becoming, like I said, the housekeeper of Starling House. And there's some people that are also involved in the story that are looking to find out more about Starling House through Opal. So it's really this story of like really digging into the house and the history of it and what has happened, and along the way understanding that there's more than meets the eye to this home and to the people that were taking care of it, basically. So by the time I got to the more paranormal aspects of this, it started to really pick up for me, and I did really like the way that it ended. It was very abrupt, I think, and it was something I wasn't expecting, but I did like it for the most part. So there were some things I definitely could have done without, and I think, like I said too, the beginning of it was just so slow for me. I was hesitant to even give it a 4-star, but I did just really like the paranormal aspect when it came in. So I thought that it kind of sits between that 3-star, 4-star, and I gave it really the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's something I need to reread, you know, kind of thing. And so I just stuck with the 4-star because I wasn't really comfortable giving it a 3-star either because of how much I liked the paranormal things. So it just kind of sits at a really weird question mark kind of rating, but I think I will eventually reread this and see what maybe I have missed and see if that rating does end up changing for any reason. Now actually getting into the books I had set for my April TBR, we have The Daughters of Istahar by Hadir El-Spy. This was one of my Wheel of D20 books for the month of April for the prompt of a fantasy, and Oh my God, did I love this book. This is the book I was hoping and praying the Jasad Heir would be, because if you know, the Jasad Heir I read in March was slated to be this Egyptian-inspired mythology, and I was so disappointed in it that I ended up selling it off. This is the Egyptian-inspired world that I was looking for in the Jasad Heir. This was the one that gave me those feels that I wanted from Egyptian-inspired worlds. This is dealing with a world where women are very much kind of not looked at very well. It's very much a misogynistic, patriarchal kind of world. And you follow two main characters, one of which is this young woman who is being married off to a well-to-do man. And she, though, is not really for this. The only reason she's doing it is that she's hoping that this guy will give her the ability to attend a school that essentially is for magic-wielding people that want to then get involved in this revolutionary group that essentially is looking to make women's rights more of a prominent thing in government. And you have another character who is a part of that resistance, who is very kind of poor. She doesn't really have a lot to her, but she's also a magic wielder in this world, which is also kind of looked down upon in this world. They're looked at as dangerous and not something that is very appealing. There is a female-female romance within this. There is also talk about abortion within this, and in general women's rights. So there is a little bit of some sexual assault. There is some talk of, you know, harassment and things like that. So be mindful of that going into this, but this is very much a women's rights story inspired by the feels of ancient Egypt in some ways, I think. Absolutely love this. 5 out of 5 stars. Cannot wait for book 2, which I know is already out, so I want my grubby little hands on it like right now, but I gotta wait. Next, I actually ended up rereading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. This was my April book club book for the book club I'm in with my mom and my sister. My mom read it for the very first time and absolutely loved it. My sister and I both, this was our first reread of the books, or at least of the first book. I don't know whether or not we're going to continue with the series with this book club. I think it really just depends. I have yet, honestly, to even hear what our May book club book is, so I would not be surprised if we continue with the series. But we also technically in January read Fourth Wing, but they did not continue with Iron Flame. My mom, my sister, and I did. So I don't know whether or not we're going to continue with the series or if it's just kind of a one and done for right now. But I ended up actually loving this a lot more than I did the first time. I think that there were so many things that I forgot about since it's been about almost 2 years, I think, since I've read the first book, and I just loved it. I don't know what it is, but this book in particular, I just felt like the first time I couldn't get into it because I listened to an audiobook version that was more movie-like, and I think that that kind of tainted the story for me in some ways, at least the beginning of it. But I listened to the normal audiobook version of this time and followed along with my ebook copy that I have, and I just fell in love with this world again. Like, this world is so much what I love about people that write fae stories. Like, it's this very ethereal world. There's so many, like, bright glittery things in this world that I love, and then all of a sudden in comes the darkness and in comes the swords and all these things, and I just love it. I know Sarah J Maas is kind of hit or miss for a lot of people. Personally, I really like these books. I think that they're really well done in terms of the world building in a lot of ways, especially the further on you get in the series. Next is actually a book that I was really surprised with how much I loved, but I was also not surprised because I was told I would love this book by some friends that read it and said that they think I would love it with my love of grim dark fantasy, and that was Blood Scion by Deborah Follier. Now this is, again, it's a grim dark fantasy. It even verges, I think, in some ways on sci-fi in some capacity, but this is grim dark. This is like everything grim dark you can expect. This actually is inspired by the various children that are taken from their homes in Africa specifically that are used as child warriors and used in wars, civil wars to be exact, and how they are essentially warped and twisted into becoming killers, either to survive for themselves or to protect the people that they are in this war with and the team that they are kidnapped into. This follows a character who is essentially a secret magic wielder, and she joins up with the people that are looking to actually kill her. And it's a lot of this back and forth of, you know, the fact that she feels guilty for killing all these people that she has to kill, but at the same time she has to save her own skin and protect herself and protect her family. And it's this constant battle that goes on that I can't even imagine how it must be for the kids in real life that have to go through this kind of thing, because it's just absolutely heartbreaking, and it's a heartbreaking story. So do tread into this lightly if you decide to read it, but so good. I do think that a few places I kind of lost it in terms of like the plot of the story. Like, I feel like I kind of missed out on a few things, so I couldn't give it a full 5 out of 5 stars, but it definitely is a high 4-star for me, and is definitely a book I will reread, especially if there is a sequel that comes out with this, which I do believe there possibly may be, I don't know, but I will definitely be checking out more of Deborah Fallier's work because I absolutely love this. This was recommended to me by both Brie and Brandy, who said that, you know, with my love of grimdark high fantasy especially, that I would love this, and they were absolutely right. For sure, we'll be looking more into this kind of work in particular, and I feel like I realized in this month in particular just how much my taste aligns with both Brie and Brandy. Next, I read an ebook, which was If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. This is another trans author that essentially it's more of a fictionalized story. It's a contemporary that deals with a young woman who's in high school that essentially has transitioned already, has gone through actually multiple surgeries, years of therapy, medications, all these things, and is a trans girl. And she moves to a new town where nobody knows her, and it's really this maneuvering and understanding of how to live in a world where, first of all, in the South, it's very much looked down upon being trans, and there's a lot of stigma against it and all these things. Then there's also this navigating of self and understanding, you know, the story of this character who went from one gender, the ramifications of it with family, with friends, with people that they interacted with, then moving after the transition into a new world as practically a new person, almost as a blank slate, but having this thing hanging over your head of what if somebody finds out about me? What if somebody finds out that I am a trans person? And there is, you know, transphobia in this and some homophobia. There's also a character who I believe is maybe bisexual, maybe gay, I can't quite remember, but there is a female-female romance that's also brought into this, and it's just a story that was so well done. Next, I read the April read for Brandy's book club, which was the poetry collection Bright Red Fruit by Safia El Hilo. This, again, a poetry collection, is kind of similar, I think, to what you would see with like Elizabeth Acevedo or Ellen Hopkins or Dean Atta, where it's like a fictionalized story told through poetry to a certain extent. It's about a young girl telling her story growing up in a very, I want to say, either Arab or Pakistani family. It's some Middle Eastern kind of family, at least as far as I'm aware. And essentially navigating that and the problems of being a young woman in this type of a family where there's so many rules and regulations in terms of like societal norms that she has to navigate. And it's also about her building her reputation and building her career as a poet and getting involved with an older man who supposedly has best intentions for her, but is not really the case. Like, if you liked Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson and you like the style of Elizabeth Acevedo in terms of the poetry style that she does with books like The Poet X, this is a book for you. It was really good. I think that this would have been better for me to read if I had read it physically. I listened to the audiobook of this and it just didn't hit in the way that I wanted it to in some ways. I just think that this would have been better for me to read physically in general. So I would like to be able to get a physical copy of this and again, reread this one because I think it definitely deserves it. But 4 to 5 stars, really liked it. But next I ended up reading The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. I've had this book on my shelf for a long time and I finally decided to get to it. This I absolutely loved. I loved this from beginning to end. This deals with a man who is a very prominent baseball player in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and he finds out that his wife wants to divorce him, and that leads to the confession that she's never had an orgasm with him, and that is a huge blow to his ego. And when they separate and are on the brink of divorce, this guy ends up getting swept up by some friends of his, and turns out there's a book club for several different alpha style men that read romances, and they read romances to better understand their wives and understand what it is that they're doing wrong in their relationships to better themselves as people. It's split up between both Gavin and Thea, and I will say the miscommunication that goes on in this book did irk me so much. But I ended up actually understanding it in some ways. Like, I got it to some certain extent because of the things that, like, in my marriage, like, we might miscommunicate on. But it just felt so different than what I've read from other romances in the past. Like, this is the first romance I've ever read where the man actually takes accountability for his actions and tries to make himself better. And I really, really loved that. I totally see why this series is so well loved. I would love to read more books in this series because there's a ton of different standalones that are in this world with people that are in this book club in particular. So I will definitely be checking those out in the future. But 5 out of 5 stars, loved this. Cannot wait to read the next one. I ended up reading Lore Olympus Volume 1 by Rachel Smith. I finally have started this series and it was good. Don't get me wrong. I think that overall it felt a little rushed at times, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but I enjoyed it immensely. I like this idea of Hades and Persephone. I do feel like that there are some things about it that feel a little icky, which makes sense because the whole myth of Hades and Persephone is pretty icky. If you don't know, go look it up. Go read some iterations of Hades and Persephone's story. It's a little icky from time to time, but I think overall the feeling of each of the gods was definitely brought into this. I think in some ways it's a little campy, but it's good. Like, as a graphic novel series or like as a webcomic, I could see why this became so popular. And I would like to be able to read the rest of the series at this point because I think it's good enough to where I would be interested in reading more of it. But it wasn't my favorite graphic novel of all time. It's definitely not my favorite story of all time, but it was enjoyable. It was fast to fly through. Did it actually kind of fall in love a little bit with Persephone as a character. She's definitely somebody I would love to be around. But yeah, 4 to 5 stars, not too bad. Next, I ended up reading The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Now, this was an addition to my TBR. It wasn't originally on my TBR for any reason, but because I read The Fury, I wanted to see where all these stories line up, because supposedly The Fury, The Silent Patient, and The Maidens, all by Alex Michaelides, are in the same world. And so this really helped me understand a lot about what I had missed from The Maidens and what the epilogue of The Fury was all about. So if you are getting into Alex Michaelides, start from the beginning. Go to The Silent Patient, then The Maidens, then The Fury. It's all going to make sense when you've done that. But this was okay. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars again. Really liked this a lot. Alex Michaelides, I think, is definitely an author where the style of his writing will change from book to book, but overall they still feel really cool. Like, this is your typical mystery thriller. The Maidens was more of a dark academia mystery thriller style, and The Fury was more of an Agatha Christie whodunit kind of style of mystery thriller. So, like, he's got kind of like a hand on all of the different subgenres for the most part within mystery thriller, but I like how his stories all feel very different from each other, and there's like these little Easter eggs of like, oh, this person's involved in this one, this person's involved in this one, and I really enjoyed that. But I will say I feel like I lost, again, a little bit of the story within this. I got a little bored partway through. This one is dealing with a man who is essentially working as a psychiatrist of sorts with this young woman who murdered her husband supposedly, and she's gone mute. She no longer speaks, and he's working with her to figure out what exactly happened, why she doesn't talk anymore, and maybe even find out more about the murder of her husband and whether or not she actually did it, because since she couldn't talk to people, everyone assumed she did it, and so it just kind of was one of those things where there's some question as to whether or not she actually did kill her husband, and this character is definitely the one that is going to find that out. Really well done. Loved the way that the story ended, honestly. It came out of right field and was definitely an ending I was not expecting. And I think, again, this would just require a reread. I would like to reread this, The Maidens, and The Fury once again to tie them all finally together. And I liked them all a lot, to where that is definitely something I would like to do. Next, I have probably one of my more favorite middle grades I've come across so far. Was another recommendation from Bree and Brandy, who said I was going to love this, and I don't know why I doubted them, because this was just amazing. And that is Amari and the Night Brothers by Bibi Alston. Bree has been shouting about this book from the rooftops for months now to me. I finally bit the bullet and decided to read it, and I fell in love with Amari. Oh my god, this kid, oh, she has my heart, soul, and every little space in between. I can't with her. I just love this so much, and I have the second book, and I'm so excited to read that soon, because I just love this world. The supernatural cop aspect, like almost Men in Black style, was really, really cool. I fell in love with this entire world and the story and the finding of her brother, because if you don't know and have been living under a rock for some reason, Amari and the Night Brothers is a story about 12-year-old Amari whose brother has been missing for the last 6 months. He is much older, he's a young adult, and when he's out going on this job that they don't really know much about, Amari doesn't, he goes missing, and he's been missing for 6 months, and Amari is trying to figure out what the heck happened to her brother. And she gets this random little piece of something in the mail, leads her to this entire world of the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, which her brother was involved in, and there's competitions, there's trials, like every single thing about this book was tropes and things that I love in fantasy, and especially in middle grade fantasy. I love anything to do with magic schools, competitions and trials, a mystery. Like, this hit every single box I wanted it to, and I loved it. Again, I don't know why I doubted Bree and Brandy on this one. This was the book that really made me understand that based on this and Blood Scion, that my tastes with Bree and Brandy really are very similar, because we connected on so many different things about what we loved in these books. Next, my most disappointing read of the entire month, and will very much be unhauled when I get to my quarterly unhaul in July, Normal People by Sally Rooney. This was boring. Completely boring. It was literally just about two people who keep breaking up and getting back together, and breaking up and getting back together. That's it. That's literally the entire book. And I was bored from the beginning. I don't want this anymore. 2 stars. Goodbye. And finally, the last book I completed in the month was The Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the second book in the main series of The Witcher, and was our April read for the Witcher read-along. I will be having the live show for this coming out on Saturday, this coming Saturday, May 4th. So we'll be talking more about this in that one, but again, liked this a lot. 4 out of 5 stars. Enjoyed it to where I feel like I'm really getting into this series, and I'm very excited to see what is going to happen with Ciri in particular. But some of the political aspects of this, again, I kind of missed, just like I did with the other books in this series so far. But without further ado, that is all of the books that I have read in this month. Oh my gosh, I can almost not carry the stack, but I am so proud of the work I did in April. Seriously, I did not expect to read 17 books in the month, and the fact that I did is, again, mind-boggling. Like, how did I manage to get through 17 books in 30 days? That is insane to me. That's almost a book every 2 days. Like, how? How did I do that? Is it gonna happen again? Maybe in June, but probably not much any other time. Probably not much. But anyway, let me know what you guys ended up thinking of these books if you've read them yourself. Let me know what you guys ended up being able to do in the month of April as well. And if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an Owlette in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.